We've got our 2018 Jeep Trackhawk. Today we are going to be doing a oil change. So a couple of things I'll point out before we get started. You can see the drain plug for the oil pan. So I've gone ahead and just thrown a light up here just that way you can see, but that is where your oil filter sits. The other thing you have is going to be the oil cooler. The oil cooler never had any sort of block off plate or access plate from the factory. What I've got here is one that I've made. I'll put a link on the video as far as how to do that. But this you'll remove, and then that'll give you access to the oil cooler. To go ahead and drain that, it holds about half a quart. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put the camera down and we'll get started with showing you how to change the oil. Okay guys, and here's the oil that we're gonna be using. Pennzoil 040, ultra synthetic. And then for the filter, I've got the Mopar filter, and I've done the SRT filter on here. So that part number, if you can see that, is 0503804-1AA, also MO041. All of this I just bought on Amazon. I did have trouble finding the oil itself locally, so that's something to keep in mind. I'll put some links in the description again, just so that way you guys can find it. All right, of course I'm doing this on a lift. You can do this in your driveway, at home, either crawling underneath or a set of jack stands. First things first is we are going to take that drain plug loose and start draining the oil. This is our first oil change. This Jeep has about 2,000 miles on it, so I wanted to do that initial oil change, make sure everything was going well. No oil shavings or anything like that in there. One thing I do have on this Jeep is a oil catch can, so I will go over that when we get the vehicle back down. In 2,000 miles, we did not have a whole lot of oil in there, but definitely enough oil that I'm glad I put the oil catch can on. So we'll let that drain, and then we'll get the filter. While that is draining, what I'm going to do is kind of paint over, and we will show the oil block off, or the oil cooler block off that I've made. So again, a link in the description. This is just a couple of plastic retaining clips that I have on it, and they just pop out. And then this whole cover comes off. And then from there, I will paint up and see if I can get this to stay on video. So at the end of here, you've got a 15mm bolt. That is going to be the oil cooler drain. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put some aluminum foil in there just to help drain into the pan when we get to that point. But we'll pull that out, let the additional oil drain down, and then replace that and put the cover back on. Now that we've got a majority of the oil, just a slow trickle, I'm going to go ahead and get the filter removed. I'm just going to generic filter wrench. And there is our filter. This was our first oil change on the Jeep, and one thing I did notice was the filter from the factory was just their standard black Hemi filter. From what I've read and what I used on the old SRT, the SRT filter is just a little more, I guess filters a little more finely. One thing I did want to note is the O-ring for the oil filter did stick to the vehicle. So that's one thing that you want to double check for. Again, this was the cutout that I made for the oil cooler drain plug access. Kind of where my finger is, that is the drain plug all the way at the end. I'm going to try to zoom in as much as I can, but right there, that's going to be that drain plug. So I'm going to get that loaded up with some aluminum foil just to help the draining, and then we'll get that drained out here in just a moment. All right, so the oil filter, make sure you put a dab of oil on the O-ring, the new one, and that one's just going to spin on. What I'm going to do is show the camera on this, because the original filter being black made it hard to see. That way everybody sees oil filter location nice and easy. So now you can see our oil filter, that white guy sitting there. It does have a little drain tray, which is nice, just that way it's sending oil down to the drain pan versus all over the plastic underside. One optional thing that you can do that I do is just spraying a little bit of brake parts cleaner. On anything that was dripping oil. Just helps clean everything up. You can get it as I had in a Sure Shot can or just a regular old aerosol can. All right, so what I've done is just put a little bit of aluminum foil back here, and I've got a 15mm wrench or 15mm socket on a wrench just to get her loose. As that starts to come, I'm going to pull the wrench out. And so that's all that was just a standard drain plug. And as you can see, we're draining some oil, should hold about half a quart. So we'll let that drain through and then reinstall the plug, then reinstall our cover. All right, back underneath the hood, I've got the JLT catch can. So again, I've got about 2,000 miles on this Jeep, and just want to show for everybody, if you can see in there, try and pan this camera a little bit better. We've got, I don't know, I'd say a third of that catch can full of oil. So that's kind of the value of a catch can. All that blow by, instead of going back into the engine, is now caught and you can dump it right out. All right, now that you've got oil topped off, go ahead and start her up. I usually let her run for about 15-20 seconds. Let oil cycle through. And then we're going to shut her down in just a moment. And then just simply check her oil level. I've added 7.5 quarts. Seems to be about normal on these. And once again, we'll double check. We're actually right at the low side of those hash marks. I'm gonna check one more time and then maybe add just a little bit more. Yeah, I'm still right at the low side of the hash marks. I'm gonna add a little more oil just to make sure we're good. And that should get her good.